Hi, this is Brad Conover with Scenic America. At Scenic America, much of our time is spent dedicated to helping protect the visual character of our communities and countryside by fighting visual blight caused by a proliferation of billboards, cell towers, and sprawl development. Communities and landscapes across America now face another potential visual impact on the horizon: wind energy. Issues of energy production and consumption not only affect our population, but also the landscapes in which we live, work, and play. With the quest for a more sustainable energy ethic rising to the forefront of discussion, such as has been raised during this conference, sources of alternative energy production, like wind power, are becoming more of a reality across the globe, in places like Croatia, France, Australia, Denmark, China. Across the United States, projects have already been developed in places like Tennessee, Idaho, Ohio, Kansas, New York, West Virginia, Hawaii, Maine, Texas. In the United States, the federal government has even identified areas of greatest wind potential and also prioritized the areas for wind development. The wind industry has set a goal to increase its production capacity by 5% by the year 2020. Now, this may not seem like much, but it's significant when you consider that the current capacity of 11,000 megawatts of production equates to only about 1% of the United States' current energy output. So, this begs the question, where is all this new energy production going to take place? In which landscapes will the new projects occur? And is it possible for us to embrace the cleaner technology associated with these facilities while still maintaining the visual character of the place they're sited? Along with the potential for avian mortality, visual impacts remain a primary opposition voiced by communities in areas where projects are proposed. And it's important to remember these are not the windmills or wind farms of folk literature or nostalgia. In fact, they're really not wind farms at all, but rather industrial energy facilities with hundreds of turbines measuring 300 feet high and nearly as much wide. The motion and visual prominence of wind facilities makes visual mitigation very difficult, if not impossible. The number of turbines, the scale of the development, the sheer size of the structures requires enormous footings. In addition, wind projects include more than just the turbines, but also all of the ancillary facilities needed to maintain them and distribute the power generated, such as new roads and new transmission lines in many cases. And perhaps most of all, the prime environmental dilemma is that the places that often have the highest wind potential are also the places with the highest scenic, cultural, and historic values. And also, wind resource potential is usually greatest along the ridgelines, which just so happens to be the most visible location in the landscape. So communities find themselves in a conundrum. They're faced with challenges in trying to embrace green technology while protecting landscape views they value. Smaller municipalities are searching for ways to save money, to take part in a more sustainable future. And so, with these new projects has come increased publicity, and increased publicity has led to increased public scrutiny over the potential impacts and also their relative value. Numerous organizations have been formed, and there's advocates on both sides of the issue. So, in a country where large-scale wind energy production is relatively a recent development, what does the public at large think? What do you think? Does the type of landscape setting in which a project is proposed make a difference in regards to public perception of a project? For instance, are individuals more likely to embrace the sculptural qualities of a wind farm in a relatively featureless prairie landscape that lacks visual variety, but object to the same if proposed along the rugged ridgeline of a magnificent mountain view? Look at the landscapes here in Wales. Now look at the same landscape after development. Has the sense of place changed? Is this use compatible? Now look at this landscape in Kansas. Now look at it after development. Would our opinion change if these were oil wells instead of wind turbines? Is there an ecological aesthetic involved? Should wind projects occur on public lands where environmental regulations to protect scenery exist, but where expectations for scenery are likely higher? What about private lands, where permit processing usually is regulated by the local Public Utility Commission, which don't always have guidelines in place for mitigating impacts, especially visual impacts? One safe assumption is that regardless of whether sited in an urban area or a remote location, these facilities are likely going to dominate the visual environment. And if that's the case, then a question we should ask ourselves should be, are there better ways to design and lay out these facilities? What role must our profession play? We've already seen the architecture profession become involved in designing buildings that have wind energy and self-generation power integral to their design, and even this case, where a Dutch-based firm has taken on the idea of a more sculptural, abstract version of a wind turbine, in this case maybe a flower design. The planning, locating, and designing of these facilities so that they fit into the landscape and minimize intrusiveness is both an art and a science, and it should represent a rapidly expanding field of opportunity for the landscape architecture profession. Communities are looking for help. Communities need to know that tools and techniques for proper siting and visual mitigation exist, that there are methods for analyzing and documenting visual quality and for visualizing impacts. And frankly, they should know that their opinions matter. Citizens are local experts whose landscape preferences can and should be measured to help balance issues of social values and other impacts. So, the purpose of the session today is to engage each of you, hopefully, in a rich discussion about the potential for our profession and becoming more involved in this issue for the future. The panelists you're going to hear from today are extremely knowledgeable on the subject and will each share their own perspectives based on professional experience and research. And speaking on behalf of Scenic America, let me reinforce, ours is not a position of advocating either for or against this renewable resource, but rather helping communities address the protection and preservation of landscape characteristics they value. And it is in my opinion that landscape architects as a profession possess the appropriate skills to lead the way. While there may be questions that still remain as to what, where, when, and how wind energy can best be implemented, there should be no question regarding the importance of our profession's involvement. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to great things in the future.